The morning mist clings to the riverbank like breath on cold stone. 400,000 years ago, northern Spain. A muscular figure emerges from the wooden shelter, shoulders twice as broad as yours, skull thick as armor, but eyes that sparkle with intelligence that would shame most modern humans. She is Homo heidelbergensis, and she's about to start a day more complex than any creature before her has ever lived. The fire still smolders from last night, carefully banked with stones arranged in a perfect circle. She doesn't just rekindle it, she selects specific wood, pine for quick heat, oak for long burning. She knows the chemistry of combustion 400,000 years before chemistry exists. Her thick fingers, powerful enough to snap your wrist, delicately arrange kindling with the precision of a surgeon. Around her, the camp awakens. Not a random gathering, but an organized settlement. Shelters made from wooden posts and animal hides form a semicircle around the central hearth. Each structure faces the fire architectural planning that considers wind direction, drainage, and defense. These aren't caves. These are humanity's first intentional homes. A child, perhaps 8 winters old, helps his grandmother sharpen stone tools. The boy's hands already show the calluses of a craftsman. By the fire, 2 men examine wooden shafts, checking for straightness, testing flexibility. They're not making simple sticks. They're engineering precision weapons that will fly true at 70 meters. The morning routine isn't random. Water carriers head to the river with sewn leather bags. Hunters check spear points, replacing any that show microfractures. Women prepare plant fibers for cordage, their fingers working with practiced efficiency that speaks of generations of knowledge. This is industrial organization before industry exists. As the sun rises higher, painting the Spanish hills gold, the camp transforms into a workshop. Every person has a role. Every action has purpose. They move with the confidence of apex predators who've conquered cold, tamed fire and built the world's first permanent homes. They are architects of the future. And this morning, like every morning for 200,000 years, they're building humanity's foundation one perfectly planned day at a time. His hands select the spruce branch with the care of a violin maker choosing wood. Not too green, it would warp. Not too dry, it would snap. The perfect balance of flexibility and strength. Grown straight in tight forest competition for light. This tree has been watched for 3 seasons, waiting for this moment. Today, it becomes death incarnate. The process takes days. First, stripping bark with stone scrapers so sharp they could shave hair. The wood beneath gleams pale as bone. Using fire-hardened stone tools, he shapes the shaft, constantly checking balance, testing flex. Every few minutes, he sights down its length like a sniper checking a rifle barrel. One tiny curve could mean the difference between meat and starvation. But the genius isn't just the shaft, it's the tip. Carved to a point harder than copper, then held over specific flames at exact angles. The fire penetrates the wood's cellular structure, transforming soft spruce into something that can punch through horsehide, crack ribs, reach hearts. He's not making a pointed stick. He's engineering a guided missile. Watch his son, learning by observation. The boy attempts his own spear, failing repeatedly. Each failure is a lesson. Too much pressure, the wood splits. Wrong angle, the point weakens. The father doesn't correct with words, but with gestures, guiding hands, demonstrating grip. This is humanity's first technical education, passed through generations without writing, without language as we know it, but perfect in its transmission. Testing comes at dawn. The master flings his spear at a target, a deer hide stretched over packed earth. It flies true, covering 70 meters in heartbeats, punching through the hide with a sound like thunder. The point emerges bloodless but lethal, having passed completely through. Modern Olympic javelin throwers would recognize the form, the follow-through, the physics. Around him, others craft specialized spears, short thrusting spears for defense against cave lions, lighter throwing spears for smaller game, heavy lances for mammoth hunting. Each design refined over centuries, each improvement shared across populations. They haven't just invented the spear, they've invented the entire concept of weapons development. The wood remembers every strike that shaped it, every flame that hardened it, every hand that balanced it. When archaeologists find these spears 400,000 years later at Schöningen, still lethal, still perfectly balanced, they'll realize these weren't primitive humans. These were engineers whose math was muscle memory, whose laboratory was the forest, whose graduation exam was survival. The spear masters didn't just hunt. They transformed physics into food. The skull fractures tell a horror story in calcium. 2 holes, perfectly matched, above the left eye. The weapon probably a wooden spear or stone axe struck twice with practiced precision. This wasn't rage. This was execution. 430,000 years ago, Cima de los Huesos, Spain. The victim was young, healthy, probably never saw it coming. The first blow would have dropped them. The second made certain. Then, the body was carried, not dragged, to the pit, 43 feet down into darkness, joining 27 others in what would become archaeology's oldest crime scene. Picture the moment. Perhaps an argument over food, mates, and leadership. Maybe something simpler. A look interpreted as challenge. Territory crossed without permission. The killer's hands evolved for crafting tools and controlling fire, discovering they could also control death. The weight of the weapon, the angle of attack, the precise point of impact, all calculated in a brain large enough to understand consequence, but not yet burdened by written law. The community's response reveals something profound. They didn't abandon the body. They didn't hide the crime. They carried their dead murderer or victim, we'll never know, to a special place. The pit of bones wasn't accidental. It was intentional. Every body placed with purpose, some possibly with ceremony. Even in death, even in murder, there was meaning. But here's what changes everything. Among the bodies lies an elderly woman with severe spinal problems. Someone who couldn't hunt, couldn't gather, could barely walk, yet she lived for years with her disability, fed by others, protected by the group. The same community capable of murder was capable of compassion that would humble modern societies. The killer lived among them afterward, slept by the same fires, ate from the same hunts, perhaps even helped carry their victim to the pit. There were no police, no justice system. Yet somehow, the group continued. The first murder created the first moral dilemma. How do you punish when punishment hasn't been invented? In the darkness of Cima de los Huesos, 28 skulls stare upward through empty sockets. They remember the first time human hands turned from creation to destruction. They witness the birth of humanity's darkest capability, the intentional ending of our own kind. Every murder since, every war, every genocide, echoes that first fatal blow above a left eye in prehistoric Spain. The bones keep their silence about who struck whom and why, but they scream one truth. We've been killing each other since before we were fully human. Violence isn't modern. It's older than our species, and 430,000 years later, we still haven't learned how to stop. The old woman's eyes never leave the flames. In her 60 winters, ancient beyond measure, in a world where 30 is elderly, she's learned every mood of fire. The blue base that means perfect heat, the yellow tips that waste wood, the white core where stone tools can be transformed. She doesn't just tend fire, she conducts it like a symphony. Tonight's fire is special, built on a foundation of stones arranged in a spiral, creating airflow patterns that modern engineers would approve. She feeds it carefully selected wood, oak for the base heat, pine for quick flames when needed, birch bark for starting secondary fires. This isn't random burning. It's chemistry without equations, physics without formulas. Watch her teach the young ones. A girl, perhaps 12, learns to bank coals for the night. Too much covering, and they suffocate. Too little, and they die before dawn. The girl practices the motion spreading ashes just so, leaving tiny airways, creating tomorrow's fire while tonight still burns. One mistake means starting from scratch, when morning frost makes everything damp. The fire serves 20 purposes simultaneously. It cooks meat, breaking down proteins that would otherwise require massive jaw muscles to chew. It heats stones for tomorrow's toolmaking. It dries wet clothing, smokes, hides, hardens spear points, provides light for evening work. The smoke keeps mosquitoes away, signals other bands, maybe even carries meaning in its patterns. But watch what happens when strangers approach. The firekeeper adds specific plants, herbs, that create distinctive smoke. Each band has its signature scent, its identification without words, broadcasting, "We are the river people," or "We are the mountain hunters." The smoke speaks a language older than words. She remembers when fire was rare, precious, carried in smoldering fungi from camp to camp. Now they can make it striking stones to create sparks, catching them in prepared tinder. But she still treats each flame with reverence. Fire transformed them from just another ape to masters of the night. It let them move north, survive winters, digest foods that were previously toxic. As darkness deepens, the fire becomes a fortress. Cave lions prowl the edges of light, their eyes reflecting green, but they won't cross the flame barrier. The firekeeper adds larger logs, creating a wall of heat and light. Inside this circle, humans are safe. Outside, death waits with patient yellow eyes. Tomorrow, she'll teach the girl about fire rain, how to heat stones until they crack, creating sharp flakes. About fire medicine, which woods create antibacterial smoke. About fire language, how different flames carry different messages. The old woman is dying, but her knowledge will outlive her by 400,000 years. The horses sense something wrong. 20 animals, including pregnant mares and spring foals, cluster nervously at the lake's edge. The wind carries no human scent. The tree line shows no movement. Yet their evolutionary alarm bells scream danger. They're right. Death surrounds them on three sides. Invisible, patient, coordinated. The signal is a bird call that isn't quite right. Suddenly, the forest explodes. 15 hunters emerge from concealment so perfect that modern special forces would take notes. They've been waiting since before dawn, covered in mud and plant matter, breathing through hollow reeds when horses passed within touching distance. This isn't hunting. It's warfare against a species that can run 40 miles per hour. The lead stallion reacts instantly, wheeling toward the only escape, the lake. Exactly as planned. Hidden hunters rise from the shallows where they've been submerged for hours, bodies blue from cold, spears ready. The horses spin back toward shore, directly into the killing ground the humans have prepared. Every escape route calculated, every reaction anticipated. The spears fly in sequence, not a chaotic barrage but timed waves. First spears hamstring the lead animals, destroying mobility. Second wave targets pregnant mares, slower and more valuable. Third wave consists of thrusting spears for close combat. It's organized like a military operation because that's exactly what it is. The first army wasn't fighting humans. It was fighting dinner. One young stallion breaks through, magnificent in its desperation. A hunter, probably 16 years old, sprints alongside at impossible speed, matching the horse stride for 50 meters. At full sprint, he casts his spear, the point entering behind the shoulder blade, puncturing both lungs. The horse runs another 100 meters on adrenaline alone before collapsing. The boy will tell this story until he dies. His grandchildren will paint it on cave walls. Within 12 minutes, 8 horses are down. 3 escape to spread their genetic fear of lake shores. The humans begin immediate butchering, not random hacking, but systematic disassembly. Teams specialize. One for hide removal, another for organ extraction, a third for meat sectioning. They work with the efficiency of a modern slaughterhouse, but with stone tools and respect for what they've killed. Nothing is wasted. Meat for eating, bones for tools, hide for clothing, sinew for thread, hooves for glue, hair for rope, organs for medicine. 1 horse feeds the band for weeks. 8 horses mean survival through winter, trade goods for neighboring bands, time to develop art and language instead of constantly seeking food. The Schoningen horses died 300,000 years ago, but their death created something magnificent, proof that humans could cooperate, plan, anticipate, and execute with terrifying precision. The Great Hunt wasn't about killing. It was about becoming something more than animals. It was about becoming us. The footprints tell the story. Tiny feet, barely 6 inches long, walking confidently among giants. A heidelbergensis child, perhaps 3 years old, following adults across mudflats where horses were butchered, where cave lions prowled. where one wrong step meant death. But the prince don't waver. This child wasn't carried. They walked through a world of monsters as if they owned it. By 5, children were already apprentices to survival. Watch this boy, making his first stone tool under his grandfather's patient eye. His strikes are clumsy, shattering more stone than shaping it. But each failure teaches the angle of fracture, the rhythm of percussion, the feel of good stone versus bad. His grandfather doesn't correct with words. Language isn't sophisticated enough. He guides with hands, demonstrations, approving grunts. The girl beside him, his sister perhaps, practices something different. She's weaving plant fibers into cordage, her fingers already nimble from years of watching her mother. By 7, she'll be making baskets. By 10, clothing. By 12, she'll be teaching younger children, continuing a chain of knowledge that stretches back beyond memory. These children play games that would terrify modern parents. They climb cliffs where one slip means death. They practice spear throwing at each other with blunt sticks. They explore caves where bears hibernate. Every game is training. Every toy is tomorrow's tool. The weak don't reach adulthood, creating a brutal selection for strength, intelligence, and luck. But watch how the band protects them too. When predators approach, children are circled instantly, adults facing outward with spears. During hunts, children stay with elders who can no longer run but whose knowledge is irreplaceable. At night, children sleep in the center of the group, surrounded by the warmth and protection of adults who would die before letting harm reach them. A heidelbergensis childhood lasted perhaps 8 years. By 9, you were hunting small game. By 12, joining adult hunts. By 14, you might be a parent yourself. Childhood was compressed but intense, filled with learning that modern education systems take decades to impart. These children learned astronomy for navigation, botany for medicine, geology for tool-making, zoology for hunting, engineering for shelter building, all before they could grow a beard. The footprints at sites across Europe show children were everywhere, adults were. They watched births and deaths, successful hunts and starvation, violence and tenderness. Nothing was hidden because hiding meant not learning, and not learning meant not surviving. These weren't innocent children. They were miniature survivors in training, absorbing in years what we spread across decades. Thunder children, raised in the echo of stampeding horses and roaring lions, growing up harder than stone but capable of art, of care, of creating the future from nothing but will and wisdom passed hand to hand across generations. The storm approaches like a living mountain of black clouds, but she doesn't panic. Her home, humanity's first intentional architecture, was built for this. Watch her check each element with the confidence of an engineer inspecting her design. The posts, driven deep into earth when it was soft from spring rain, now frozen solid as bedrock. She selected each beam herself, young oaks with straight grain, flexible enough to bend without breaking. The crossbeams are lashed with sinew that tightens when wet, creating joints that grow stronger in storms. This isn't shelter, it's engineering that would impress modern architects. The walls are masterworks of insulation. An inner layer of woven branches provides structure, then dried grass for insulation, then overlapping hides with fur facing inward, sewn with waterproof seams. Finally, an outer layer of bark sheets, arranged like scales to shed water. 4 layers of different materials, each serving specific purposes. R-value calculations, done through trial and error, across generations. Inside, the space is organized with surgical precision. Sleeping areas elevated on platforms of branches and hides off the cold ground, away from crawling insects. Storage pits dug into the floor, lined with bark, containing dried meat, nuts, spare tools. A central fire pit with stones arranged to radiate heat evenly. Smoke drawing up through a deliberately designed opening that creates airflow without letting rain in. She remembers her grandmother's stories of living in caves cold, damp, disputed with bears and lions. But her generation builds homes. They choose locations with drainage in mind, protection from prevailing winds, proximity to water, but above flood levels. They understand concepts that wouldn't be formalized for 400,000 years. The storm hits with violence that would flatten modern camping tents, wind that could uproot trees, rain that falls horizontally. But inside the shelter, a family of 8 stays warm and dry. The frame flexes but holds. The walls breathe but don't leak. The smoke hole creates negative pressure that actually strengthens the structure in wind. Children sleep peacefully through nature's fury. Adults work on tools by firelight, the storm just background noise. They've conquered weather itself through architecture, no longer slaves to caves and climate. They're masters of their own space. They've created humanity's first inside, a concept so profound that every building since is just elaboration on their theme. When morning comes and the storm passes, the shelter stands unmarked except for water patterns showing where rain was successfully redirected. She steps outside, checking for damage, finding none. Her home faced nature's worst and won. In this moment, humanity stopped being victims of environment and became its architects. The smell would make your mouth water from a mile away. Not just meat cooking, that's too simple. This is cuisine. Fat rendering at different temperatures, marrow bones cracking in coals, organs wrapped in leaves creating primitive pressure cookers. The evening feast isn't just food, it's chemistry, culture, and community combined. Watch the preparation. Women who've been processing plants all day create something unprecedented recipes. Wild onions, layered with meat. Berries mashed into paste, mixed with rendered fat, creating energy bars that will last weeks. Seeds ground on stone, mixed with water and hot stones, producing the first porridge. They're not just cooking, they're inventing cooking. The butchering from today's hunt continues with surgical precision. Different cuts for different purposes. Tough meat for slow cooking, tender cuts for quick searing, organs eaten raw for their vitamins. The master butcher, a woman whose knowledge of anatomy exceeds modern medical students, directs the process. Every cut deliberate, every portion assigned according to complex social rules. The fire isn't one flame but multiple cooking stations. High heat for searing, coals for slow roasting, ash pits for underground cooking, stones heated to specific temperatures for boiling water in hide-lined pits. It's a kitchen that would function in any modern restaurant, just with different materials. Children watch, learning that the liver goes to pregnant women. The brain to elders for their teeth can still manage it. The heart to successful hunters. Not random distribution, but nutritional science learned through millennia of observation. They see how sharing food creates bonds stronger than blood, how generosity ensures future reciprocity, how a feast is really a social contract. As darkness falls, the eating becomes ritual. Stories accompany each course. The hunt is recreated with sound effects and gestures. Close calls with predators are demonstrated. Everyone laughs at the teenager who fell in the river. But encoded in entertainment is education. How to read horse behavior, where to place spears, which plants complement meat. The bones tell their own story. Cracked for marrow with specialized tools. Scraped clean of every morsel. Then sorted, some for tools, others for fuel. The rest cached for lean times. Nothing wasted because waste means death. The feast looks like abundance, but it's really about maximizing every calorie. Bellies full. The band lounges around fires that push back darkness. This is when language develops, when plans form, when culture transmits. The feast created leisure time for things beyond survival. Every human achievement since art, music, mathematics exists because heidelbergensis learned to cook efficiently enough to create time for thought. Tomorrow they'll be hungry again. But tonight, with grease on their faces and meat in their bellies, they're gods of their domain. The feast feeds more than bodies. It feeds the future. The last heidelbergensis doesn't know she's last. 200,000 years ago, maybe Spain, maybe Africa, she stands barely 5 feet tall. They've been shrinking, adapting to changing climates and scarcer food. Her brain is actually larger than her ancestors. Desperate evolution trying to think its way past extinction. But some problems can't be solved with intelligence alone. Around her, the world has changed. The massive game herds are thinning. Climate swings wilder than ever. Ice ages alternating with heat waves in mere centuries. But the real threat walks on 2 legs, speaks with new complexity, and carries weapons that fly farther than heidelbergensis spears ever could. Homo sapiens has arrived, And heidelbergensis, the former masters, are now obstacles. She remembers her grandmother's stories of when they ruled from Africa to Britain, when their spears were the deadliest weapons on earth, when their shelters were humanity's most advanced architecture. But memory doesn't stop extinction. Each year, fewer bands arrive at traditional gathering places. Each season, territories shrink as sapiens expand with technologies heidelbergensis can't match. The end isn't violent. It's gradual, then sudden. Reproduction rates dropping as stress increases. Children learning sapiens techniques, slowly becoming something else. Interbreeding, we carry their genes still. 1 to 2% of our DNA, a monument to their existence. They didn't die out so much as dissolve into us. Their identity diluted past recognition. Watch her teaching her daughter to make fire. Unaware, it's the last time heidelbergensis hands will pass this knowledge to heidelbergensis child. The technique is perfect, refined across 400,000 years. But perfection doesn't guarantee survival. Evolution doesn't reward the best, it rewards the most adaptable. And heidelbergensis, magnificent as they were, couldn't adapt fast enough to humans who changed the rules. Their legacy surrounds us, invisible but essential. Every time we gather around fires, we're heidelbergensis. Every time we work in coordinated groups, plan hunts, or build shelters, we're channeling their innovations. They gave us the blueprint for being human. We just built it better, faster, with improvements they couldn't imagine. The last cooking fire dims. The last spear leans unused against a shelter that will collapse, unmaintained. The last eyes that saw the world through heidelbergensis, understanding close forever. 600,000 years of dominance, ending not with apocalypse, but with a whisper. Yet in every human alive, their ghosts persist. In our DNA, our behavior, our dreams of fire and fellowship. We are their children, even if we've forgotten their names. Every human achievement stands on foundations they laid with hands that could crush stone, but chose instead to shape it into tools, into art, into tomorrow. Night fell on the giants, but their dawn became ours. We are heidelbergensis, refined and reborn, carrying their fire forward into futures they imagined but never saw. The giants are gone, but we are their monument, walking and breathing and building on plans they drew in wood and stone and blood 400,000 years before we learned to write their story down.